The rain wasn't just falling. It was an angry, cold storm. It hammered the dark alley bricks, trying to wash away the fresh blood that was mixing with the dirty gutter water. His German shepherd, Max, pulled hard on the leash, a low, deep growl rumbling in his chest. That's when Thomas Carlson saw her. A cop, slumped against his wall in his territory. She was in her dark blue uniform, but it was soaked dark red. She was bleeding out and she was dying. Her eyes, hazy and lost in the pain, fluttered open and met his. He saw the small, terrified flicker. She knew exactly who he was. Thomas Carlson was the most feared man in the city. He was the Mafia. He was the shadow that the police always chased but could never catch. He owned the judges, the docks, and the night. And this was his alley. He should have kept walking. His mind screamed at him to turn around. He should have let her die. It was the smart thing to do. It was the rule. Cops were the enemy. They were the ones who had failed him. But he didn't move. He just stood there, the rain soaking his expensive maroon suit. He looked down at her, at the police badge on her chest, at the life that was fading so fast from her face. Max, his dog, stopped growling and gave a small, confused whine. Thomas leaned in, his tall frame shielding her from the worst of the storm. His tattooed hand, a hand that had ordered the end of many men, moved slowly. He gently, almost impossibly, touched her face. She flinched, a small, weak sound of fear in her throat. She was expecting the end. Instead, his voice cut through the rain, a low, hard promise. "You're not dying tonight." He pulled out his phone. He didn't call 911. He didn't call the police she worked for. He scrolled to one number and pressed it. He was calling his private doctor. And with that one single decision, the untouchable Mafia boss just lit a match. He was about to start a fire that would burn his entire world, and the city's police force, straight to the ground. Let me take you back to where it all began. But first of all, welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're listening, hooked, and already enjoying the story, please hit subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love seeing our community around the world. Tomorrow I'm dropping another sweet story, so don't miss it. And the first 4 people to comment with their real names will be featured in our next story. Now, let's continue. 5 years ago, Thomas Carlson was a different man. He was still in the family business, but he smiled. He laughed. He had one person in the world who he truly loved. One person who kept the good in him alive. His younger sister, Lily. She was 19 years old, full of life, and she was the only good thing in his dark world. Then came a sunny Tuesday afternoon. Lily was at a small cafe meeting a friend. A gas leak explosion leveled the building. That's what the newspapers called it. That's what the police report said. But Thomas knew it wasn't a gas leak. It was a bomb. It was a message sent by his one true rival, a human trafficker named Marcus Vance. Vance was a new kind of evil, a man who dealt in selling people, a man who saw human life as nothing but money. Thomas and Vance were at war for control of the city's port. Vance decided to hit Thomas where it hurt the most. He murdered the only person Thomas loved. Thomas, broken, went to the police. He gave them evidence. He gave them names. He gave them witnesses who saw Vance's men plant the bomb. And the police did nothing. The case was buried. The evidence was lost. The witnesses disappeared. The lead detective told Thomas it was a tragic accident and to let it go. Thomas saw the truth in that detective's eyes. He wasn't just lazy. He was scared. Or worse, he was on Vance's payroll. That day, the police didn't just fail to find Lily's killer. They covered it up. They protected him. The old Thomas Carlson died with Lily. The man who walked away from that police station was someone new. He was cold, empty, and ruled by one single, burning need: revenge. He spent the next 5 years building his father's small mafia into a powerful empire. He became untouchable, a ghost king, all for one reason: to become strong enough to destroy Marcus Vance and get the revenge the police had denied him. He would burn Vance's world to the ground, and he would happily burn the police department with it. Far away, in another part of the city, a young woman named Evelyn Tillett was pinning her own police badge to her uniform. She lived in a small, clean apartment that was always too quiet. She checked her gun, put on her heavy vest, and looked at a picture on her nightstand. It was an old photo of 2 little girls, about 10 years old, with their arms around each other, smiling a gap-toothed smile. One was her. The other was Lily Carlson. Evelyn wasn't just a cop. She was Lily's childhood best friend. She was Evie, the girl who practically lived at the Carlson house, the girl who told Lily all her secrets. When Lily was killed, a part of Evelyn died too. She was at the funeral watching from the back. She saw Thomas, his face like stone. She saw the police cars there, and she felt a wave of pure hatred. She knew they had failed. She knew they wouldn't get justice for her friend. So she made a choice. If the police wouldn't hunt the killer, she would become the police and do it herself. Evelyn Tillett didn't join the force to help old ladies cross the street. She joined for one reason: to get a badge, to get a gun, and to get access to the police files. She was on a secret, one-woman mission. For 2 years, she had been working alone off the books. She worked patrol in the most dangerous part of the city, Thomas Carlson's territory, because she knew it was close to Vance's operations. She was slowly, carefully building her own secret case. She was going to find the men who killed Lily, and she was going to arrest the man who gave the order, Marcus Vance. For 3 weeks, Thomas Carlson had been watching her. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know she was Evie. His men just reported that a single, clean cop was digging into Vance's business. A cop who wasn't on the payroll. A cop who was asking questions. Thomas saw her as a tool. A clean cop who could get into places his own men could not. He planned to use her, to feed her information from the shadows, to point her like a gun at his rival. He never, ever planned to meet her. But that night, Evelyn got too close. She got a tip from a new informant, someone who promised her a name. The name of the man who planted the bomb. The meeting was in a dark alley. Evelyn went alone. She shouldn't have. It was a trap. She walked into the alley, and 2 of Vance's men stepped out of the shadows. "You've been asking too many questions, cop." One of them sneered. Evelyn was good. She fought hard. But it was 2 against 1. A knife flashed. Pain, hot and sharp, exploded in her stomach. She gasped. The knife came again, high in her chest. She fell back against the brick wall, sliding to the wet ground. The men laughed, kicked her once, and disappeared into the storm. Evelyn was left alone. She was dying. She tried to reach for her radio, but her arm was too heavy. Her vision was going dark. She was so cold. Minutes later, a man and a dog turned the corner. Thomas Carlson was on his nightly walk. It was the same path he took every night, a routine that calmed his mind. Then his dog, Max, stopped and growled. He saw the uniform. He saw the blood. His first instinct was to walk away. Let her die. She's one of them. But something made him look closer. He had seen this cop before from a distance. This was the one who was hunting Vance. His new tool. He couldn't let her die. Not yet. He needed her. He stepped closer. And that's when he saw her face. The rain had washed the blood away. She looked up, her eyes wide with terror. She knew him. This was the moment from the beginning. The moment where he should have walked away. But as he leaned in, his tattooed hand touching her face, he said the words, "You're not dying tonight." He lifted her into his arms. She cried out in pain and then went limp, passing out. He carried her to his armored car, his suit ruined, her blood now on him. He drove, fast, through the city streets, not to the city hospital, but to a secret high-tech clinic hidden in one of his warehouses. Dr. Aris, his personal surgeon, was waiting. "Thomas," the doctor said, his eyes wide. "This is a cop." "She's a patient," Thomas said, his voice hard as steel. "Save her." The next morning, the 14th Precinct Station was in chaos. Officer Evelyn Tillett was missing. Her patrol car was found. Her radio was silent. Her captain, Frank Riley, was a good man, but he was drowning in a city he couldn't control. He was yelling at everyone, "Find her! Find her now!" Then the anonymous call came. A rough, disguised voice said, "Stop looking for your officer. She's at the St. Jude private clinic. She's alive." The line went dead. Captain Riley froze. The St. Jude? That was Thomas Carlson's. He thought it was a trap. He thought Carlson had kidnapped his officer. He led a tactical team himself. They burst through the clinic doors, guns up, screaming, "Police!" They expected a firefight. They expected a dungeon. Instead, they found a calm, gray-haired doctor who looked annoyed. "Please be quiet," Dr. Aris said. "You're upsetting my patients." Riley pushed him aside. "Where is she?" The doctor just pointed. "Room 3. She's resting." The surgery was a success. Riley and his team kicked open the door, and the entire police force froze. It was not a dungeon. It was a $1 million medical room. Evelyn Tillett was sleeping in a clean bed, hooked up to monitors. Her wounds were perfectly stitched. She was breathing. She was alive. This was the first shock. It made no sense. Captain Riley and his men were completely, totally baffled. Their biggest enemy, the man they had been trying to arrest for 5 years, had just saved one of their own. The question echoed through the entire police department, from the rookies to the captain. Why? Evelyn woke up to a sound. A slow, steady beep, beep, beep. Her body felt like it was filled with heavy, wet sand. A hot, deep ache burned in her stomach and chest. She tried to take a deep breath and gasped, the pain sharp and sudden. Her eyes slowly opened. This was not a hospital. Not a city hospital, anyway. The room was private, silent, and everything was a clean, cold white. The air smelled sharp like chemicals. The machine next to her bed was new, its green line moving up and down with her heart. She was in a clean bed. She was alive. She remembered. The alley, the rain, the dark shapes, the pain. Then, a face. A man's face, leaning close. Tattoos. A dog. Thomas Carlson. A jolt of pure fear shot through her, stronger than the pain. She tried to sit up, but her body screamed in protest. She fell back against the pillows, breathing hard. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." The voice was deep, calm, and came from the corner of the room. Evelyn's head snapped to the side. There, sitting in a dark chair as if he owned the place, which she realized he probably did, was Thomas Carlson. He was not wearing the blood-soaked maroon suit from the alley. He was in a simple, expensive-looking black sweater and dark pants. He was perfectly calm, watching her. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. The steady beeping of the monitor next to her sped up. Beep, 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 beep. "You!" she whispered, her voice rough. "Where am I? What do you want?" Thomas stood up and walked slowly to her bedside. He was a tall man, and he seemed to block out all the light. He looked down at her, his face impossible to read. "You're in my clinic," he said, his voice quiet. My doctor saved your life. You had 2 stab wounds. The knife missed your heart by a centimeter. You were lucky. Lucky. Evelyn's fear was turning to anger. You kidnapped me. I saved you, he corrected her, his voice still flat. If I had left you, you would be dead. If I had called 911, you would have bled out before they got there. So you just saved me? Evelyn was confused. This made no sense. Why? Why would you save a cop? To get information? To get a favor? I'm not a dirty cop. I won't help you. Thomas almost smiled. It was a cold, small thing that didn't touch his eyes. No, you're not dirty. That's the one thing I'm sure of. You're the only clean cop in this whole city, especially when it comes to Marcus Vance. Evelyn's blood ran cold. She stared at him, trying to keep her face blank. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop, Thomas said. His voice was suddenly hard, like a door slamming shut. Stop lying. It's a waste of my time. I've been watching you for 3 weeks, Officer Tillett. I know everything. He leaned in, his hands in his pockets. I know you work patrol in my territory, even when you don't have to. I know you've been using your badge to get old files. Files on Vance. I know you've been meeting with small-time informants off the books on your own time. You're not just doing your job. You're hunting him. He paused, his eyes searching her face. You walked into an ambush. Vance's men were sent to kill you. You got too close. I saved you because you are a useful tool, a weapon I can't afford to lose. You're the only person who is hurting him as much as I am. He leaned even closer. So I am going to ask you one time, and you are going to tell me the truth. Why? What does a clean cop have against Marcus Vance that makes her risk her own life? Off the books. Evelyn looked at the powerful, dangerous man in front of her. This was the city's mafia boss. Killer. Criminal. He had saved her, but she was his prisoner. She had no gun, no badge, no backup. She was trapped. She saw no way out. He knew her secret. He knew she was hunting Vance. She could lie, but he would see it. She looked into his cold, dark eyes, and she saw something she did not expect. It was not just coldness. It was a deep, familiar, endless pain. It was the same pain she saw in the mirror every morning. The tough cop shell broke. She was just a woman in a hospital bed who had almost died for a ghost. He killed her, she whispered. The words felt like they were ripping her throat. Thomas was still. His face didn't change. Killed who? Partner? A source? Evelyn took a shaky breath. She was about to say the name, the one that connected their 2 worlds, the name that would change everything. He killed Lily. The world stopped. Thomas Carlson, the man who never flinched, the man who was made of ice, physically took a step back. His face, once a cold mask, went completely pale. He looked as if she had just stabbed him. What did you say? He asked, his voice a rough whisper. Lily? Evelyn said. The tears she had held back for 5 years now welling in her eyes, hot and angry. Lily Carlson. She was my best friend. Thomas just stared at her, his mind racing, trying to understand. We grew up together, Evelyn said, her voice shaking. We were neighbors. Our parents. I was Evie. The name hit Thomas like a physical blow. Evie. A memory, old and buried deep, flashed in his mind. A small, blonde girl with a loud, goofy laugh, running through his father's house. A little girl with scraped knees, always following Lily. They were inseparable. The girl who used to steal cookies from his mother's kitchen right alongside his sister. He hadn't heard that name in years. He thought she had moved away, disappeared after the funeral. He looked at the woman in the hospital bed. This wasn't a cop. This wasn't a tool. This was Evie. He sank into the chair in the corner, his head in his hands. The cold, powerful mafia boss was gone. In his place was just a man, an older brother. He was, for the first time since his sister died, completely and totally shocked. You joined the police? For her? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Evelyn nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand. I was there, at the funeral. I watched from the back. I saw you. I saw how the police failed you. They failed her. They all stood there in their nice uniforms and they lied. They called it a gas leak. I knew it was a lie. I knew he did it. Her sadness turned back to the hard anger that had kept her going for 5 years. So I joined, she said, her voice hard. I joined their stupid club. I wanted to get inside. I wanted to use their own system against them. I wanted to find the men who planted that bomb. I wanted to find the man who gave the order. She looked at Thomas, and for the first time she was not scared of him. They were the same. I want Marcus Vance, she said, her voice like steel. I want him to pay for what he did. They were quiet for a full minute. The only sound was the steady beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor. Thomas finally looked up. The shock was gone. The cold mask was back. But his eyes were different. They were not empty anymore. They were on fire. You've been alone in this, he said. It was not a question. It was a statement. Yes, she said. The cops in my precinct. They're either too scared of Vance or they're on his payroll. I don't know who to trust. So I trust no one. Captain Riley, Thomas said. What about him? Riley's not dirty, Evelyn said. He's just old. He's tired. He's outgunned. He's a good man, but he can't fight Vance. Not alone. But we can, Thomas said, standing up. Evelyn looked at him. I have a network, Thomas said, his voice low and dangerous. I have eyes and ears in every dark corner of this city. I know things the police will never know. I have men inside Vance's crew. And I have a badge, Evelyn said, understanding. I can get into places you can't. I can get warrants. I can use the law to tear him down from the inside. Legally. A slow, cold, dangerous smile spread across Thomas's face. This was so much better than his original plan. This wasn't just using a tool. This was a partnership, forged in the same fire. He won't see it coming, Thomas said. He's expecting the mafia to fight him in the street. He's expecting the police to hit him with weak cases. He is not, in his worst nightmare, expecting us to be working together. This was the second twist. The secret was born. The alliance was made. So what's the plan? Evelyn asked. Her pain was still there, but now she felt something new. A wild, dangerous hope. The plan is simple, Thomas said, walking to the door. You recover. My doctor will take care of you. When you are strong enough, you go back to work. What do I tell Riley? You tell him you were ambushed by junkies, Thomas said. You tell him you were stabbed, you blacked out, and you don't remember anything. You tell him you have no idea how you got to my clinic. You stick to that story. He won't like it, but he can't prove anything else. He opened the door. Then, you wait. I will get you a new phone. You will have a new confidential informant. An informant who will be 100% perfect every single time. We will feed Riley small pieces of Vance's operation. We will let the police tear him apart, piece by piece. And when the time is right, we will take him down for good. What about the man? The man who planted the bomb? Evelyn asked, her voice barely a whisper. Thomas stopped, his back to her. Vance is yours, Evie. The law can have him. But the man who killed my sister, he's mine. He looked back at her. Get some rest. The war is just beginning. He walked out and closed the door, leaving Evelyn alone in the clean, white room. She was no longer a prisoner. She was a partner. And for the first time in 5 years, she was not alone. 2 weeks. That's how long Evelyn stayed hidden inside Thomas Carlson's clean, white clinic. Dr. Aris was a miracle worker. He changed her bandages, gave her medicine, and kept her safe from the questions he knew were piling up outside. Thomas never visited again. He didn't need to. The plan was set. On the 14th day, Dr. Aris removed her stitches. "You'll have a scar," he said, his voice calm and professional. "I don't care," Evelyn said. "I'm ready." She walked out of the clinic in a fresh set of civilian clothes, her police uniform in a bag. She felt the cold city air on her face and took a deep breath. She was stiff. She was sore. But she was alive and she had a mission. The moment she walked into the 14th precinct, her fellow officers erupted in cheers and applause. They clapped her on the back, careful of her injuries, their faces full of relief. "Tillet, you're alive. We thought you were a goner." She smiled, a thin, practiced smile. "You can't get rid of me that easily." The celebration lasted for about 30 seconds before Captain Frank Riley's voice cut through the noise. "Tillet, my office. Now." The happy sounds died. Evelyn nodded, her face turning serious. She walked past the desks, into his glass office. He closed the door and the blinds, blocking out the rest of the precinct. Captain Riley was a man who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His face was gray, his eyes were tired, but they were sharp. He stared at her not as a captain, but as a man who smelled a lie. "Sit down," he said. He didn't sit. He paced behind his desk. "I'm glad you're okay, Evelyn. The whole department is. But we have a problem. A very, very big problem. Sir, you were missing. Then you were found. Not in a city hospital. Not in an alley. You were found in a private, high-tech clinic owned by Thomas Carlson. The Mafia, our #1 target. So, I need you to tell me very slowly and very clearly, what the hell happened?" Evelyn kept her breathing steady, just as Thomas had told her. She looked at her captain with wide, honest eyes. This was the most important performance of her life. "Captain, I've told you 3 times from the hospital bed," she said, her voice quiet, just a little shaky, like she was still scared. "It's the truth. I was on patrol. I got a bad tip. I walked into that alley. It was dark. They came at me fast." "Who?" Riley pressed. "Who came at you?" "I don't know," she lied, her voice cracking just enough. "It was too dark. I think it was junkies, maybe 2 or 3 of them. They wanted money. I fought, but they had a knife. They stabbed me." She looked down at her hands, as if remembering. "I felt the pain. I must have blacked out. That's it. That's all I remember." "That's not all," Riley said, his voice hard. "You woke up at St. Jude's." "Yes, sir," Evelyn said, looking back up at him. "The next thing I knew, I woke up in that clean room. A doctor told me I was lucky. He said an anonymous person, a man, dropped me off at their door and left. He said they saved my life. I don't know how I got there, sir. I swear on my badge. I don't know." Riley stared at her for a long, painful minute. He was a good cop. He knew a lie when he heard one, or at least he always thought he did. But Evelyn's story was perfect. It was simple, and, most importantly, it couldn't be proven wrong. There were no cameras in that alley. No witnesses. She was the victim. He finally sighed, a deep, tired breath, and sank into his chair. He rubbed his face. "All right, Tillet. he said, his voice full of defeat. I don't like it. It stinks. The whole building smells like it. It stinks of Thomas Carlson. But I can't prove a thing. And you're one of my best officers. He looked at her. You're on desk duty for 1 week. I want you here where I can see you. Then, you can go back on patrol. Welcome back. Evelyn let out a shaky breath she didn't know she was holding. Thank you, Captain. It's good to be back. She walked out of the office. The first part of the plan was done. She was back inside. For a week, she did paperwork. She filed reports. She drank bad coffee. She was the perfect, boring, recovering cop. Then, on Friday, her patrol shift was approved. That night, she was at her quiet apartment, getting ready for her shift, when a small package that had been slipped under her door caught her eye. It was a small, plain brown box. No return address. She took it inside and opened it. Inside, there was no note. Just a brand new, disposable burner phone. As she held it, it buzzed, making her jump. It was a text message. From an unknown number. Warehouse. For 50 Kent Street. Vance is using it to count cash from his drug runs. A small crew, for men, lightly armed. They're there tonight. 10 p.m. A side door on the east wall is always unlocked. Evelyn's heart hammered. It was starting. She put on her uniform. She had a new partner tonight, a young rookie named Miller. She drove the patrol car, her mind racing. How was she going to do this? Thomas had told her to stumble on it. At 9:50 p.m., she was driving near Kent Street. What's that? She said suddenly, looking down a dark side street. What's what, boss? Miller asked, confused. I thought I saw someone, Evelyn said, turning the car. A man, carrying a heavy bag, looked like he went into that warehouse. Probably just a night watchman, Miller said, yawning. Maybe, Evelyn said, her voice tight, but let's check it out. This area is quiet. Too quiet. She parked the car a block away, in the shadows. Stay here. Call for backup, quiet. Tell them we're checking a possible BNE. I'm going to take a look. Evelyn, wait, Miller whispered. But she was already gone, moving through the shadows, her gun in her hand. She found the east wall. She found the side door. She tried the handle. It was unlocked. She pushed it open just a crack. She heard voices, laughter, and the sound of a money-counting machine. She smiled. He was perfect. She went back to the car just as 2 other patrol cars rolled up, their lights off. It's active, she said to the other officers. I hear multiple voices. Sounds like they're counting money. Let's go in. They breached the door. Police! Don't move. Hands in the air. The 4 men at the table were so shocked they didn't even have time to reach for their guns. They were sitting around a table covered in mountains of cash. It was the easiest, cleanest bust of Evelyn's career. Officer Tillett gets lucky break in drug bust. The headline read the next morning. Captain Riley clapped her on the back. Good instincts, Tillett. Damn good instincts. Evelyn just smiled. Just lucky, I guess, Captain. A week later, the burner phone buzzed again. This time it was a phone call. She answered. Evie, Thomas's voice said. No, hello. I'm here. This one is bigger, he said. A shipment of illegal guns. They're military grade. Vance is selling them to the street gangs. Pier 9. It's coming in tonight, hidden in a fish truck. The truck's license plate is 4KL3-7-1. You can't stumble on this one. The line went dead. Evelyn stared at the phone. He was right. She couldn't just happen to be at Pier 9. She had to give this to Riley. She walked into his office. Captain, I have to tell you something, and you have to trust me. Riley looked up. What is it? I have a CI, she said. A confidential informant. He just gave me a big tip. Riley's face hardened. A CI? Who? Since when? Is this related to Carlson? He won't say who he is, sir, Evelyn said, lying smoothly. He just called me. He said he respects me. He said he hates Vance more than he hates cops. He gave me a tip. A big one. A truck full of illegal machine guns. It's arriving at Pier 9. Tonight. She slid a piece of paper with the license plate onto his desk. Riley stared at it. He was suspicious. He hated informants he couldn't control. But a weapons shipment. If this is a trap, Evelyn. It's not, she said with a confidence she truly felt. He's good. I can feel it. Riley had to follow the lead. He set up a huge sting operation. He had SWAT teams, patrol cars, everyone hidden in the dark, rainy docks. At 2 a.m., just as the CI said, the fish truck with the plate 4K L3-7-1 rolled up. The police swarmed it. They opened the back. It was full of fish. For a second, Evelyn's heart stopped. She thought Thomas was wrong. It's clean, Captain, an officer yelled. Check it again. Riley yelled back, shooting Evelyn a furious look. Tear it apart. They did. Under a false floor, beneath thousands of pounds of ice and fish, they found them. Crate after crate of brand new military-grade assault rifles. It was the biggest weapons bust in the city's history. Now, Captain Riley was very interested. This is how it went for a whole month. The 14th precinct was on fire. Evelyn Tillett was their star. Her ghost informant was a legend. He was never, ever wrong. They hit a drug house. They hit a money laundering operation. They hit a smuggling ring. Every single time, the information was perfect. Every time, they took another piece of Marcus Vance's empire. The entire police department was shocked. They were winning. For the first time in years, the city felt safer. The cops felt like heroes. And they had no idea that their victories were being hand-fed to them by the city's most powerful mafia boss. While the police celebrated, Marcus Vance was losing his mind. He was in his high-rise office, throwing glasses against the wall. He was losing millions. He was losing his product. He was losing his power. He knew there was a leak. He knew someone was talking. He just didn't know who. He started to get paranoid. He had 3 of his own men killed, thinking they were the rat. But the leaks kept coming. He was getting sloppy. He was getting desperate. He made a final, desperate decision. He would move his most valuable product, the human trafficking victims, the people he was holding, to one central, secure location. A warehouse at the docks. He would move them all at once and ship them out of the country before the police, or whoever was helping them, could find him. Thomas learned this from one of his men, a man high up in Vance's crew. The final piece was in place. Evelyn's burner phone buzzed. It was a message. Empty park. Midnight. Come alone. She found Thomas sitting on a park bench under a single flickering street light. The air was cold. He's moving, Thomas said as she walked up. He's scared. He's putting all of them, all the people he's taken, in one place. Warehouse 12 at the city docks. He's moving them tomorrow night. Evelyn's breath hitched. This was it. All of them? We can get him. We can get him on human trafficking. He'll go away for life. Yes, Thomas said, but his face was dark, darker than the shadows. He handed her a thin manila file. Evelyn opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper. A photo of a man with cold, dead eyes and a long, thin scar on his cheek. Who is this? Evelyn asked. Julian Petrov, Thomas said, his voice pure ice. He calls himself Ghost. He was Vance's top enforcer 5 years ago. He still is. Thomas's tattooed hand, the one resting on the bench, was clenched into a fist, his knuckles white. He pointed at the picture. "That is the man," he said, his voice a low, deadly growl. "He's the one who was seen leaving the cafe. He's the one who planted the bomb. He's the one who killed Lily." Evelyn stared at the face of the man who had murdered her best friend. All the air left her lungs. All she felt was a cold, sharp hatred. "Vance will be at the warehouse," Thomas said, standing up. "He will be overseeing the shipment himself. He's too paranoid to trust anyone else. Vance is yours, Evie. The law can have him. You can put him in cuffs." He looked at her, his eyes locking with hers. "But this one, Petrov, he'll be there too. He's Vance's personal guard. Petrov is mine." Evelyn understood the deal. This was not just about justice. This was about revenge. "What's the plan?" she said, her voice hard. "You take this to Riley," Thomas said. "You tell him your CI has given you the motherlode. Vance's entire trafficking operation. All the victims all in one place. Riley won't be able to resist. He'll throw everything he has at it. He'll want to lead the raid himself," Evelyn said. "It doesn't matter," Thomas said. "Listen to me, Evie. This is important. Vance is desperate. He's not just moving. He's setting a trap. He's expecting a raid. He's going to be ready for the police." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "A trap? He'll have men waiting. He'll be ready for you," Thomas said. His face was a cold mask in the dim light. "But he's not ready for me." Evelyn went straight to the precinct. It was past midnight, but she knew Riley would be there. He was always there. She slammed the file on his desk. "Captain," she said, her voice shaking with adrenaline. "My CI, he just gave us everything. Marcus Vance. His entire human trafficking ring. All the victims. Warehouse 12 at the city docks. He's moving them tomorrow night. This is it, Captain. This is everything." Riley's eyes went wide. He read the report Thomas had written. It was perfect. It had details, times, numbers. He looked up at Evelyn. This was it. The case that could end Vance for good. "How good is this intel?" Riley asked, his voice a whisper. Evelyn looked him straight in the eye. "Sir, in the last month, has my informant been wrong even once?" Riley was pale. He knew she was right. This mysterious CI was perfect. He stood up, his tired face suddenly full of energy. "Get me the tactical team leaders," he yelled, his voice booming through the quiet station. "I want every officer we have. SWAT, patrol, detectives, everyone. We are ending this. Tomorrow night." The next night, the air was cold and heavy with the smell of the salt from the ocean. Evelyn stood outside the dark, massive metal wall of Warehouse 12. She was covered in black tactical gear, a heavy vest on her chest, a rifle in her hands. She could feel her heart hammering against her ribs. This was it. For Lily. Over her radio earpiece, she heard Captain Riley's voice from the command van parked a block away. "All teams, this is it. On my mark. Breach, breach, breach." Evelyn took a deep breath. She looked at the dark, silent building. She knew Vance's men were in there. She knew it was a trap. But she also knew that somewhere, out in the darkness, Thomas was watching. "Breaching," she said into her mic. Her team kicked the side door open and flooded into the darkness. The huge metal door of Warehouse 12 flew open with a bang, and Evelyn was the first one through. "Police, show us your hands," she yelled, her voice echoing in the giant, dark space. The warehouse was like a cave. It was a massive, cold maze made of tall shipping containers, stacked high into the shadows. The only light came from a few dim safety lamps, casting long, spooky shadows. It was quiet, too quiet. Evelyn and her team, all in black tactical gear, moved forward, their boots crunching on the dirty concrete floor. "Clear left," one cop yelled. "Clear right," another. They moved deeper into the maze of steel boxes. Evelyn's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She knew it was a trap. She could feel it. "This is too easy, Captain," she whispered into her radio mic. "I don't like this." From the command van a block away, Captain Riley's voice was tense. "I hear you, Tillet. Stay sharp. All teams, stay." He was cut off. A single, blindingly bright spotlight snapped on, lighting up a high walkway. And then the world exploded. "Ambush!" a cop screamed. Bright flashes of gunfire erupted from everywhere. From the tops of the containers. From the dark gaps between them. From the high walkways. Vance's men were waiting. They were heavily armed with the same military-grade rifles the police had just seized. "Get to cover! Get to cover!" Evelyn yelled. Bullets ripped through the air with a terrible zip and whine. They sparked off the metal containers and chewed up the concrete floor. The police were pinned down instantly. They were in a killing box. "Officer down!" someone screamed in the darkness. "Johnson is hit! Johnson is hit!" Evelyn ducked behind a large wooden crate. Bullets tore it apart, sending splinters flying past her face. She fired her rifle back at the flashes of light, but it was hopeless. They were surrounded. They were outnumbered. In the command van, Captain Riley watched the chaos on his drone's heat vision feed. His officers were trapped. They were being cut to pieces. "Fall back!" he screamed into the radio. "All teams, fall back. Get out of there. That's an order." "We can't, Captain," Evelyn yelled back, her voice shaking with adrenaline. She reloaded her rifle, her hands trembling. "We're pinned. They're on all sides. We're trapped." Then, as suddenly as it began, the shooting stopped. A new sound filled the huge, dark warehouse. A slow, mocking clap, clap, clap. Another spotlight snapped on. This one lit up a high platform like a stage. Marcus Vance stood there, a sick, wide smile on his face. He was wearing an expensive white suit, and he was holding a small, black detonator in his hand. "Welcome, officers," he shouted, his voice booming over a loudspeaker system. "So glad you could make it to my party. I was afraid you wouldn't come." His men, heavily armed, stepped out from the shadows. They had their guns pointed at the trapped police officers. Vance walked slowly down a set of metal stairs. He looked around at the cops, his smile full of hate. "You have all been a real pest," he said. His eyes searched the room, and then they found her. He pointed. "Especially you." Two of his men grabbed Evelyn. They ripped the rifle from her hands and dragged her out into the open, right into the middle of the floor. "No!" her partner, Miller, yelled. He was shut up by the butt of a rifle. Vance walked right up to Evelyn. He was so close she could smell the expensive cologne on him. He grabbed a handful of her hair and yanked her head back. "You!" he whispered, his voice pure evil. "The little cop who just couldn't let it go. I know all about you. I know you've been digging. I know you've been asking questions." Evelyn stared at him, her face a mask of pure hatred. "I know what you want," he laughed. "You're just like your stupid little friend. What was her name?" "Oh yeah, Lily." Evelyn's heart stopped. "Yeah, I remember her." Vance sneered, his hot, foul breath on her face. "She was pretty. She screamed a lot, especially at the end." Rage. It was a pure, white-hot fire that burned away all her fear. She spat in his face. Vance wiped his face, his smile gone. "You'll pay for that." He pulled a pistol from his jacket and pressed the cold metal against her temple. "And now," he hissed, "you can join her." In the command van, Captain Riley watched, his face white. "No, no. All teams, do not. Get your hands off her." The voice was not from a police radio. It was deep. It was cold as ice. And it was coming from the warehouse's own loudspeakers. It was everywhere. Marcus Vance froze. His head snapped up. "What? Who is that? Who's there?" And then, a loud, grinding screech filled the air. The giant steel loading doors at the far end of the warehouse, the ones big enough to fit a semi-truck, began to roll up. A wall of blindingly bright white lights flooded the warehouse, coming from a dozen parked cars. Vance's men cried out, covering their eyes. In the middle of the light, like a dark ghost, stood Thomas Carlson. He was not alone. Behind him, fanning out in perfect silent order, were his men. They were not a messy mob. They were a small, disciplined army, all in dark suits. They were armed and they moved like professionals. In seconds, they had taken perfect tactical positions, surrounding Vance's crew. The warehouse was now a three-way standoff. The police, the mafia, and Vance's men. Everyone was completely, totally frozen. The police officers stared, their mouths open. Vance's men looked around in panic. In his van, Captain Riley was speechless. His mouth was wide open. He was watching his number one enemy, Thomas Carlson, and the entire Carlson Mafia, storming the warehouse to save his police officers. This was the shock. This was the moment the entire city would never believe. Marcus Vance's face went white with terror. He was trapped. The police were in front of him. The mafia was behind him. "Carlson!" he shrieked, his voice cracking with fear. "What is this? Are you insane? You're working with a cop. You're working with them." Thomas Carlson walked slowly into the center of the room. He never took his eyes off Vance. His face was a cold, hard mask. "She's with me," he said. That was all. Vance, in a blind panic, made his move. He shoved Evelyn hard, sending her stumbling to the ground. He raised his own gun to shoot at Thomas. But it was the opening they had planned. As Vance shoved her, Evelyn didn't just fall. She dropped and rolled, just as she had been trained. She came up fast, tackling Vance at the knees. He hit the ground hard, the breath knocked out of him. In one smooth, fast motion, Evelyn was on his back, twisting his arm. She grabbed her handcuffs from her belt. Click, click. She snapped the cuffs on his wrists, pulling them tight. "Marcus Vance," she panted, her voice shaking with victory. "You are under arrest for the murder of Lily Carlson and for human trafficking." At that exact same second, a man standing next to Vance, a man with cold, dead eyes and a long scar on his cheek, saw his boss go down. It was Julian "Ghost" Petrov, Lily's killer. He raised his own rifle, pointing it directly at Evelyn's back, to shoot her while she was busy with Vance. A single gunshot echoed through the warehouse. It was deafeningly loud. It did not come from a police rifle. Petrov froze. He looked down, confused. A small, dark hole had appeared in the center of his chest. He looked across the warehouse. Thomas Carlson was standing there, his arm extended. A thin wisp of smoke was rising from the pistol in his tattooed hand. Petrov's rifle clattered to the floor. He slumped over and fell, dead. Silence. Complete, total silence. Thomas had his revenge. Evelyn had her man. The rest of Vance's crew dropped their guns. They were trapped. It was over. Captain Riley finally found his voice. He ran into the warehouse, his gun drawn but pointed at the floor. He was completely confused. his head whipping back and forth between Thomas, Evelyn, and the dead man. Carlson, stop. Don't move. Hands in the air. You are. He didn't even know what to say. Thomas's men were already gone. They hadn't fired a shot. They had just been there. They melted back into the shadows and out the loading doors, as silently as they had arrived. Thomas stood alone. He looked at Evelyn, who was pulling a screaming, cursing Marcus Vance to his feet. He looked at Captain Riley, whose face was a mask of pure shock. Thomas didn't smile. He simply tucked his hot pistol back into his suit. He gave Evelyn a single, small nod. A nod that said, "It is done." Then, he turned around and walked out of the warehouse. He disappeared into the night. The police force was left standing in a room full of arrested criminals. They found the shipping container in the back. It was full of dozens of scared, crying women and children, who were now safe. They had the city's most evil criminal, Marcus Vance, in handcuffs. The case was closed, but the entire police force was in a daze. They were heroes, but they all knew the truth. They hadn't won. Thomas Carlson had let them win. The Mafia had just saved them all, gotten their own revenge, and done what the police never could. 1 week later, the sun was shining. It was a bright, cold autumn day. Evelyn Tillett, in her civilian clothes, stood in a quiet cemetery. The trees were red and gold. It was peaceful. She stood in front of a clean, gray tombstone. Lily Carlson, beloved sister, cherished friend. Evelyn placed a small bunch of fresh white lilies at the base of the stone. "We got him, Lily," she whispered, a single tear rolling down her cheek. She swiped it away. "We finally got him. It's over. You can rest now." She heard the sound of slow footsteps on the gravel path behind her. She didn't have to turn. She knew who it was. A black, armored car was parked on the cemetery road. Thomas Carlson walked up and stood beside her. He was wearing a simple, sharp black suit. No tie. He stood for a long time, just looking at his sister's name. He held a single white lily in his tattooed hand. He leaned down and placed it next to hers. "It's over," Evelyn said quietly, looking at the stone. Thomas stared at the name. "For her," he said, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "Yes, it's over." He turned and looked at Evelyn. She looked back at him. For the first time, she saw the man he used to be. The burning, cold fire of revenge was gone from his eyes. In its place, there was just a deep, quiet sadness and peace. He nodded at her, a sign of respect. "Be safe, Evie." "You too, Thomas," she said. He turned, got back into his car, and drove away. Evelyn watched him go. The cop and the Mafia Boss. They were from two different worlds, two sides of a war. But for a few short weeks, they had been the only two people on Earth who understood each other. They were bound by a secret that had shocked the entire city, and by a love for a girl who was gone. The war was over. The revenge was complete. Evelyn stood in the sunlight, and for the first time in 5 years, she felt like she could finally breathe.
Thank you for listening all the way. Your support means everything. Subscribe, leave a comment with your real name and where you're from, and you might see your shout out in the next story. You never know, the next one might just change your life.